Are you a dad who's got everything locked down? You've got a good job, fantastic kids, gorgeous wife, everything is going well, but you've got this little feeling inside that something may not be going right in the world, in our society, or heck, just on the playground or outside in the backyard. What can you do to ensure that you are just all the more prepared from a medical and a trauma standpoint in the house so that you can support your family above and beyond what you're already doing? Let's discuss. Hey, my name is Ryan Fields. Thanks for joining me on Hyper Academy today. Today we're talking about medical and trauma treatment in your house. I know it's something that we don't like to think about a lot, but whether it's something that's bad that's happening around our society today, or if somebody just falls on the trampoline outside or gets a cut, there are things that you need to have around the house above and beyond Band-Aids to be able to treat trauma or treat medical conditions. Now, I was a former paramedic and a captain with a large metropolitan fire department, so I've seen a lot of trauma and a lot of medical in my day. But you don't have to be medically trained in order to facilitate some good medical and trauma treatment in your house. This video, we're going to go through the trauma capabilities and dressings and medical treatment that I have in the house that you could replicate, and if available, we'll go through all of it in detail. So let's get into it. All right, so this is my green box, as I call it. If anybody ever gets hurt in the house, everybody knows where this box is. Everybody can reach it. Those that are old enough to reach it are 8-year-old. And all I have to do is say, go up, get the green box and bring it to me. And everything I need comes directly to me. And this is what's in it. So let's dive into the details, and we'll start with the easy stuff, right? First of all, Costco is always your friend. If you are at Costco, especially this time of year, you're bound to be able to find a ton of these, and having a bunch of extra Costco Band-Aids, you can never go wrong. So I always have an extra one of these available. This is, of course, as you can see, my extra, but I've got plenty of other Band-Aids that are in here. Pretty much the same assortment that I have. So pretty much any Band-Aids work, right? I mean, the water block are fine. You can get through all of these. My kids, of course, love any of the ones with the characters on them. But the Band-Aids are huge. They're very important to have, and I have a lot of them, especially these larger ones. These are going to be huge for those bigger boo-boos that you have on your knees or your elbows that you want to be able to utilize. So having the Band-Aids is huge. Now, Band-Aids is great and good and important, but there's a lot more that you can and should have available to you. And this is where some of the extra stuff comes in. So let's go ahead and talk dressings first, because if there is some type of incident where you've got a large cut or a large something that you need to take care of and stop the bleeding, we'll start from least to most severe and go from there. Least, those boo-boos, that's what we talked about, right? Get your Band-Aids, get everything taken care of. What you can do to treat those little cuts at first is get yourself some hydrogen peroxide. This is absolutely great. The first thing you want to do is rinse that cut out, rinse that scrape out, get any of the rocks, get any of the dirt and things out of there with just regular water, and you can use even just a cloth to make sure it's clean. It's going to hurt, obviously, a little bit, especially if you're dealing with the kiddos, but from there, then what you want to take is pour some of this hydrogen peroxide on. This will help, and it's really cool. You can have your kids let them watch the bubbling as it comes forward, but that will help to disinfect everything that's going on in there specifically. And then you can dry it off, and I'll talk more about these in a second, but dry it off with something like this, a 4x4 that will be sterile, and you'll be able to utilize to make sure that there's no other bacteria or anything that's in those. We'll come back to 4x4s in just a second. Of course, if it's bleeding quite a bit, I've got extra nitrile gloves just to keep the blood off of my hands or off of other people's hands, so those are always in there. But once you get those cleaned off and sterile, then you can put on either some Neosporin, like this, to help with the pain as well as to begin the healing process. I definitely put that onto the Band-Aid first, and then put the Band-Aid right over that scrape. So you've got the Neosporin. That's absolutely great to have. So from there, if they have a bigger cut, something that needs to have some bleeding control, this is where you can step up your game a little bit more, right? So for me personally, I've got a couple of different options here. You can get these type of gauze pads. Now in the ambulance world, we would call these 4x4s or 2x2s, but this is basically just the name brand version of it. So you've got Band-Aid versions here, and there's a lot of different sizes, as you can see, that I stick in here. So if it's something that's not very significant, here's a nice little 2x2 sterile gauze compress that you can use. And then they step up a little bit more in size. There's a 3x3, and then of course a 4x4. So you can use these at your pleasure, depending on how significant the bleeding is. And these will both help to stop the bleeding, and as I said, will help to ensure that you're cleaning things from a sterile perspective to make sure that those kiddos and anybody else is getting that bleeding control that they need. Now, of course, if something steps up and it's even more significant from a bleeding perspective, you can get some more significant trauma dressings. So these trauma dressings, I'll put a link in the description below to where I got these, but as you can see, these are a little bit thicker inside. They're still sterile, and this will stop bleeding a lot more significantly, and you can just pull this out, slap it directly onto that bleeding portion, and that will help quite a bit as well. If the bleeding's still continuing, there's a couple of different things that you can do. One of the primary things that we talk about first and foremost in EMT school is pressure. So wherever that bleed is, take it, put pressure on that bleeding area and hold it on there until the bleeding stops. You can elevate their extremity to get it above their heart. That will have the gravity do a little bit more work for you. And then you can try to dress it from that side. If things are worse than that, then you can get to this guy, and I'll talk about that in just a second. So those are one of those things. Those are your bandages, and then you've got dressings that go along with it. So what I have from here are, these are basically just nice little gauze bandages. So once you get the dressing on and you're stopping the bleeding, you can do a couple of different things. If you still need to stop that bleeding and it's just going like gangbusters, what I would suggest doing is grabbing this 4-inch or this 2-inch roll, and you can literally just take this entire thing once it's out of the package and push it directly onto where the bleeding is. This will soak up a lot more blood. It will add a bit of a pinpoint pressure right on the edge right there, and that pressure will help to push down. And then you can use another bandage, something like this cling tape, to wrap it around nice and tight and hold it in place and not have to continue to hold that pressure if you got that bleeding a bit under control, right? So one of these are critical to have. Again, link in the description below that you can be able to take a look at and purchase to make sure that things are working for you from a bleeding controls perspective. If it's something where you've got the bleeding under control, you just want to make sure that these dressings and the bandages are in place and not going anywhere, you can of course use some of this cloth tape, or you've even got some more heavy duty tape like this that you can utilize. And of course I always have some extra scissors in here to be able to cut things open as necessary and be able to access. So more things to keep in mind from that perspective. A couple other things that I have in here, again from a bleeding side of the house. When things get really bad, I have a tourniquet. Now you want to make sure you don't get a cheap knockoff tourniquet. These are incredibly important. If you need to use one of these, you need to use one of these. So you need to both practice with them. This came in a pack of 2, and I went through and looked at the directions. I'm not going to open this completely. However, it's pretty hard to get undone. So what I did is I pre-tore this plastic right here, so all I have to do is rip on it, pop it open, and get access. But basically the way that a tourniquet works is, you can see it's got this little plastic rod right here. This plastic rod tightens things down. So as you wrap this fabric piece around an extremity, you tighten it down based on the Velcro, and then once it's tight enough as you can get it this way, now you take this little rod and you spin it. As it spins, it's going to tighten down on the extremity. Let's say that you've got a bleed here on your arm in an artery. You go above where the bleed is, closer to the heart, place that extremity there, and it sometimes will have a notification of where is the artery. If it doesn't, just put it on there and start cranking it down. You crank it down until you see the bleeding stop, and then stop from the cranking from that perspective. Mark the time of when you set that tourniquet and get them to the hospital as quickly as possible, because you don't want to stop any further blood flow to the rest of that distal extremity. So tourniquets are absolutely huge. They're very important. I always have one of these both with me at home as well as in my hiking or my skiing backpack, so something to definitely keep in mind. Of course, other things that I have in here, as I didn't say, we talked about the gloves. I have some alcohol swabs. You know, these are good to have in case you need to clean something off and you don't necessarily have the isopropyl alcohol or the hydrogen peroxide. So these are always good to have, and if nothing else, you can just clean off somebody's skin to be able to take a look at a potential wound, right? So I have these little single towelette swabs here in and available. And then finally, we're talking about broken bones or things like that. So I always have a knife. This knife is nice because, as you can see, it's got the blade right here. So if I need to remove clothing, I can slide that into the clothing and pull backwards, and it will cut the clothing without me having to worry about cutting the person by any way, shape, or form. And then, of course, this is just a nice, easy knife that is good to use from that perspective. This is one from my fire department, but of course I will put a link of a good knife that I appreciate, and you can see it's got a nice little window punch on there too, so good all-around knife from that side. And then finally, when you're talking about broken bones, this is something that we used all the time when we were working emergencies and trauma in the field. This is called a SAM splint. So if you see it, it's pretty rigid, but it also bends. So there's a little piece of metal inside that bends and holds its shape. So the cool thing about this is if you have somebody that's broken, say, a wrist or maybe even an arm, is you can set this up and roll it so that it fits a person comfortably and will allow them to be splinted. So you can roll it like this so that somebody's hand can go there. And then if their arm is broken, as an example, you can bend this over so it kind of fits with their arm. You do this on their unbroken, undamaged, unhurt arm first, right? And then you have the basic shape of what their arm looks like. So from that perspective, then what you do is you take it to their hurt extremity and you can place this on there. Now, if you have the ability or know what the process is for checking the circulation, that might be something to do. You can even do something as simple as checking a capillary refill. If it refills in about a second, you've got pretty good circulation distal to the break. So if the break is right here, you can make sure that they are getting good blood flow. If they're not, that's something to note. And you want to note before and after you splint. So once you get this on, now you can take your 4x4 bandage, wrap it around, not too tight, but enough to make sure you're splinting the extremity. And you want to do it on the area above and below where the break is. So if the break is here, you want to make sure to get to the wrist and above, hopefully around the elbow. If it's a wrist break, you want to make sure to wrap and splint below and above here on this side. Basically, you want to make sure that that break area is in a spot where it's being splinted by this on both sides, so that there's no movement that's going on from that damaged extremity. So a SAM splint is critical. They're not expensive, and you will definitely impress the medics or the docs or the nurses when you get to the hospital and they show up and they have one of these on board. So that is everything I have from a trauma perspective in my house bag and the things that I feel like I might need at any given moment. But I'm sure I'm missing things. So those of you, those dads that are looking at this and have other options, put in the comments. Let's have a discussion. What things should I add to this? What options do you think are better to have? Should I expand the size of this bag? Let me know. I'm very curious for us to continue to move forward. One thing I did fail to mention is when you are treating something, especially a bad cut, your heart rate, your pulse, your anxiety is going to go up.
I'm freaking out, man. You are freaking out, man.
And there's ways to control that. I've got a great free guide in the description down below that will talk about how you can in the moment lower your pulse, lower your blood pressure, and lower your anxiety so that you can perform better during a crazy traumatic event where you might have to be using one of these things, especially a tourniquet. So if you're interested, totally free. Check out the guide and the link down and below in the description. And if you like this kind of content, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe as well. I have lots of great content for dads who want to improve upon their ability to be a better father, a better husband to their wives, and a more successful protector of their home. So hope you're doing great. Talk to you soon, and thanks for watching.